Oregon?
Washington, actually, but work in the Portland, Oregon office.
Here we go. What? Well, welcome to Market Express, sponsored by Trucker Talk, sponsored by Market Express. I'm stepping on my tongue already today. I'm the host, Roy Bain. Today we have Jim Dingman, President of Operations at Market Express, the trucking company. And then we have our special guest, which if you've caught it before, you happen to have seen him before, Ed Rensi. If you don't know Ed Rensi, let me give you a little background about him. If you ever stop at a nice little restaurant that has two golden arches, Ed started out way back as a hamburger cook in Ohio at McDonald's and went all the way up the ladder to the CEO for numerous years at McDonald's Corporation in North America. He's a motivational speaker. He's been on the board of directors at NASCAR, Snap-on. The list goes on, and is currently the chairman of the board at a company called Fat Brands, which has a variety of restaurants. I think last time he told me it's 22,000 restaurants, so it's not a very small.
Missed a zero,
okay. But anyway, a lot of restaurants, and I know he has a very popular pizza chain out here on the West Coast. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but Round Table Pizza, yes. I think also you have they acquired one of the restaurants that started in Colorado, Twin Peaks. So they have that in their portfolio. Johnny Rockets, you pick it, you name it, he's been there. So Ed, tell us a little bit about your history at starting at McDonald's, because that's a really cool story. I want to start off with that.
Well, I was a student at Ohio State in my senior year, and I was flunking out because I got married and had to work, and I had to get a job, and I'd worked 3 part-time jobs. So I went across the street, and there was a big sign in the window that said help wanted. So I went in and got hired making 85 cents an hour, which is 15 cents below minimum wage, but they were paying me cash, which was cool. So I said, I got to work 100 hours a week because I need 85 bucks to live. This is in 1965. Well, in February of 66, they put me on permanently and paid me $1 an hour. Then I moved into management, and I spent the next 35 years at McDonald's. And frankly, I learned a lot from Ray Kroc, Fred Turner, Jerry Newman, and the executives of McDonald's. They were people about systems, processes, procedures, and training, education, training. I'll tell you, I went to classes nonstop until the day I quit working at McDonald's. In fact, the last class I went to was a class for executive directors at the University of Wisconsin School of Business for 6 weeks to learn how to be a good member of a board of directors, all paid for by McDonald's because they believed in education. And that's something that's really lacking right now in our workforce. We as companies are not spending enough time teaching and educating our people beyond just the work function. We teach the work function, but we don't talk about human resources. We don't talk about human development. We don't talk about the psychology of leadership, the difference between management and leadership. They're parallel. They're two totally different things. Leadership is about vision and taking a team forward. Management is putting together systems, processes, and procedures that allow employees to work toward goals and specific objectives under the vision. And right now in this country, Joe Biden has no vision. He's trying to manage. And nobody wants to be managed. They want to be led. And that's the failure of Joe Biden. Trump was a leader. One way or another, like him or hate him, that man had a vision, and he said, this is where we're going, whether you like it or not. And that's where we went. So anyway, enough of that. I've been blessed with great leaders. When I worked with Nick Pinchuk at Snap-on Tools, what a beautiful chairman He was a wonderful man. I'll tell you, he's one of the best executives I ever worked with. Art Kelly was on that board, another great. I just can't tell you how many great. I worked with Bill France at NASCAR, brilliant men. All of these men and women I ever worked with had the same singular characteristic of importance: leadership. They created a vision, they championed that vision, and they recruited people into that vision and sought feedback as to whether or not the vision would meet their expectations for the rest of their life. And could they fit into that? They weren't tools, they were partners.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting you're bringing up right there where you're at, and I'm going to mention a big shout out. Kirk Ipock owns a trucking company, and it's a huge racing guy. His NASCAR Craftsman truck team won the race at Talladega this past year. So thanks, Kirk, for tuning in and watching and being all that stuff.
I'll tell you, I might dream to win Daytona or Talladega. We did win Talladega with Jimmy Spencer. With a McDonald's car, but I wanted to win that thing. I had a Craftsman truck team, and I had two drivers. Mark Donahue's son, David Donahue, drove one truck, and I can't remember the guy's name now that drove the other truck. We set one truck up to be the draft truck, and the other truck to be the lead truck. Jimmy. He's a little trucking guy. But we set fast time. In fact, NASCAR came to me and said, "You slow them damn trucks down because you can't go over 200 miles an hour. Our insurance policy won't." Well, that's when Bain wrecked. Remember when he wrecked and went up into the fence? And his transmission came out and hit Jimmy's truck, and it was 16 and 18 were our trucks. Hit that transmission, and his shifting lever cut the cab right in half, right past Jimmy's head.
Wow.
And wrecked both trucks. $500,000 later, they're sitting in the garage. I'm taking photographs. NASCAR pulls up with a whole team of people that threw tarps over everything. They said, "Don't let anybody take photographs of these trucks."
Yeah. So, but yeah, I wanted to give a big shout out.
I got to tell you, I'm glad they didn't get hurt.
And he asked it. He says, "Hey, Roy, are you trucking?" Yes. As a matter of fact, I'm at the Pilot Truck Stop in Chemult, Oregon. So kind of out in the middle of. And most people won't, because it's literally in the middle of nowhere. There's no other. I think Chemult has a population of 100, maybe. So he says, "I love listening to him. We can learn a lot from him." That's from Kirk Ipock. And then Heidi's waving. Davey Munoz, hi guys. Mark Garner, what's up, buddy? Yeah, absolutely. But it's interesting you're talking about the leadership. I'm going to bring into the first subject that we wanted to talk about, and this is where I know Jim is very versed in this, and we're going to have him pop in to start off on this one. Something that's important in the trucking industry that people don't talk about and bring up is the mental health of the drivers on the road. And that's where people in Jim's position really have to take up the leadership mantle in monitoring all the people that are on the road, because when you're in a truck, you're number one, like I said, I'm out here by myself. I'm talking to y'all on a computer screen, but it's not the same as sitting in an office talking to you. It's a lot of isolation and a lot of stuff. So, Jim, tell us about your leadership and how you handle those situations, and maybe share a few stories without names of what you've seen in your 30 years in this industry.
Oh, heck, I'll add a few names. Just I think it adds some importance. But to start that out, Roy, like I've said many times, if I was to go start my college education over again, I probably would have skipped out on business and just would have got a degree or multiple degrees in psychology. That kind of seems a good portion of where we operate in this business. But my perspective on day-to-day life out behind the wheel comes literally close to home, in that my dad was a driver for multiple years, and my father-in-law retired after 37 years of driving. And so what I would see over the course of them being out on the road is after a few days, you could tell their state of mind was changing. And then once they got back home, they would, slowly start to come out of that. So, there is an element here, and this sounds bad. It's not meant to be. It's just kind of a juxtaposed scenario. If you take the life of any given truck driver that's out on the road and you isolate them from other human beings, You put them in a very small confined space. We'll just call it, 8 by 10. Your interactions largely come from folks either in law enforcement or some sort of authoritative position. You don't really have a good sleep schedule. You don't necessarily have the best diet. You're out intermingled at certain times with, at certain places, aka truck stops, that aren't exactly known for their shall we say, well-heeled members of society. And so you start to compare that. And if you take trucking out of it, what does that sound like? It starts to sound an awful lot like incarceration, right? And so, to me, and believe me, I am not by any stretch comparing anybody driving a truck with, a felon. However, the functions of life or the surrounding start to look a lot like that. So, when you're in that type of situation, there is stress that builds. There are outside factors that come into play. And, on this side of it, and again, because it's a little bit different, I guess, ramp or runway for me to have seen that over the course of time at a home front level, I understand that. And I understand that sometimes the component is, hungry, angry, tired, lonely, etc. And people in those situations tend to come out swinging for no reason at all. And then this component, we need to be prepared for that, number one. But number two, we need to not take offense to it and try to find the means to accommodate it, if you will, to diffuse that situation and make sure that we're working towards a productive goal. Because, if you are in any of those four categories, or, as you're a driver, sometimes you're in all four at the same time at various levels, it's hard to communicate. It's hard to have high quality dialogue. It's hard to have productive outcome. And for as long as I go back in time in this industry, I've seen the same thing over and over again and found that it just doesn't have that much to do with the individual. It has that much to do with the job and the lifestyle. And we have to be adaptive and recognize that.
And I will let...
Roy, can I make a comment about that?
Yes, absolutely.
In 1956, 1958, my father, World War II vet, MP, truck driver in the military, hauling nuclear material from Cincinnati to Oak Ridge, gets out in 1944, got a job driving a coal truck, and then he became a long-haul truck driver for chemical tank lines. And he was running to Philadelphia from Ohio and back once a day, 288 miles each direction. Then he had to come home, which was another 25 or 30 miles. And when he got home, he was dead tired, and he'd go to sleep. And my mom was on my brother and my sister's butt nonstop about don't make noise. My dad was angry from the moment he woke up till he went to work for 2 straight years. He finally quit. He said, making $30,000 a year is the most money I've ever made in my life. He said, ain't worth what's happening to me. He said, I'm turning into an ugly human being. He didn't say it that way, but that's what he meant. And I tell you, from that day to this day, I've had enormous respect for truck drivers and the lifestyle they have. I used to hire McDonald's people, like we had a big fleet of cars at McDonald's, and all the executives had security and drivers. I would not hire anybody unless they were a long haul truck driver coming off the road, because they were safety conscious, they were good people, they knew how to drive, they knew how to look behind them and in front of them and anticipate problems before they got there. They were beautiful people. I had one guy that drove over 1.5 million miles and never had an accident. He said he wouldn't get back in a truck for all the money in the world. He was good at it, but he just couldn't handle it mentally. So I have empathy. And there's got to be ways to deal with that. There's got to be something more than you, Jim, recognizing it and doing everything you can do. There's got to be other ways to deal with that problem. Because psychologically, loneliness and isolation is the worst thing you can do, because we're all bees in a beehive, And when you're no longer part of the hive, you start to deteriorate because you're with your own wicked thoughts all the time. So, boy, I empathize with that. I get that, man. I don't know how you. It's like I look at Roy, and he's doing these podcasts and stuff. It gives him a social opportunity that most people don't have, driving truck. Okay, thank you, Jim.
One of our drivers just posted up something right there with what Jim said, and I'd never heard that. Halt, hungry, anger, lonely, and tired. Never heard it put that way. Anna, brilliant, brilliant way to put that. If you've heard it in an orientation class, it sounds like maybe at some point or another. I'm going to add from the trucker side to this something. I joined the Navy at 17. I turned 18 in boot camp. Did a year at Great Lakes Naval Station through school and boot camp. Then I went to a ship. Anna Rice had heard it from Jim Dingman. See, there you go. You're getting recognition, sir. So, but then I went aboard ship. Now, and I'm not saying that this is one way or the other, but on a ship, we do a 6-month deployment. You pull in every 30 days, 40 days, somewhere at a port visit for 3 or 4 days, and then get underway again. It's very structured. It's very whatever. That's what I knew in the formative years from 17 till when I went recruiting in the Navy. Once I got out there, I learned there's a life outside of the military. I got out of the military. I got into a truck. For me, I don't mind the lonely isolation, all this other stuff. When I started, we didn't even have cell phones. You stopped somewhere on the side of the road. You made a phone call once a day to dispatch. Other than that, you didn't talk to nobody.
Roy, let's be honest. When you started, they didn't have smoke signals.
I'm not that old into this business, and I've only been doing this since 2001, so I'm not that old into it like some of the other people. But
we're the same age, so just teasing. Sorry, go ahead.
I know. I'm just saying. I was alive when there wasn't even computers, so we'll leave it at that. Yes, I'm going to date myself a bit. But for me, I thrive on chaos. I always have. The military teaches you to work in a very chaotic environment. They create chaotic environments for you to work in to test you out, things like that. And I like it. Now, I also am not a huge fan of hanging out in large crowds of people. I know y'all can't tell that, but I'm not. So I keep my circle small. For me, what I do to take care of it is I have a group of friends that I call my wife, a few racing buddies, and a few driving buddies. That's how I pass the time while I'm out here. When I have a major issue, I reach out to the dispatcher. Don't always get the right answer. Then I text Jim or call Jim, and then he gets to hear about it. Ed mentioned before we went live that I'm not a super polished person. So when you see me on here, I work very hard at it. So I am not very polished. The conversation with Jim usually may not be super friendly, but I do tell him, hey, I'm upset. Don't take it personal if I yell, because I'm not yelling at you. I'm yelling at the situation. And we move forward. And I don't think he ever takes anything I say personal. If he does, he had never said a word. So, but I think you mentioned people that we do have people in the industry that were institutionalized, whether it be mental health institutes or prison or military. And I think Jim might even say this. Those people thrive very well in this industry for the most part. Do they not?
Well, I think there's a personality type, Roy, that works in the industry, and I think there are several that can. And by the way, to back up on my comments, I wasn't by any means, of course, referring to folks that are out there as having been inmates or felons or whatever. I'm just again comparing the circumstances of the job in parallel with the similar surrounding, right? But yeah, I think there's a good tendency for folks that have been out in the military, especially Army and Marine Corps, and Navy next, and Air Force after that. And there's reasons for that, right? The Army and Marine Corps tend to live in, fast evolving, developing combat situations where something is always going on that is completely outside of the plan. So they get kind of used to always having this unforeseen element introduce itself and reacting to it. In the Navy, you're, of course, used to being a little bit removed. Again, back in kind of a confined location. At least in a truck, you don't have to sleep with 8 of your closest friends within arm's reach, as you would in birthing confines. be it ship or sub. But then the Air Force guys, they're kind of used to a little bit more of a lax surrounding, a little bit more structured, a little bit more, hey, we got to check the box on each of these things, because if you don't, the plane could crash. They're not used to all of the elements, of kind of the wild card introducing it all the time. So, if you look through the branches of service, it's, Army, Marine Corps, and Navy that show up the most. And then the Air Force guys, even though they're one of the larger branches, especially compared to the Marine Corps, not quite as much. So the training there is a little bit different. And then, of course, the personality type and what you would prefer to do once you get out of that's a little bit different. So definite trend line there. Unofficial study, by the way, but I'm sure if I went out and did this, the data would support me that you'll find in those tiers very specifically.
Well, as he got called the last time we on here, Jim is a crayon eater, just for those of y'all that don't know. He's a Marine, right. So we'll leave it at that.
The red ones and the purple ones are the best, Roy. Just remember that.
And so I'm going to say this out here. Any of the guys that are watching, we have a lot of people from Market Express. If you're out here, if you have an issue going on or feeling overwhelmed at any time, message me on Facebook. If I'm awake, I'll get back to you. I'll talk to you, maybe be able to provide you with some assistance. A little background with this company. It's the very first driver that they hired here. The day cab backed up to the dock, and in the intro was me picking up the very first load at Market Express. For those that don't know, that's why that's in there. So, Ed, do you have any take on this or what?
I want to ask Jim a question. Why don't you create a social network among all your drivers that's a discrete communications channel where they can talk to each other globally? And so they can share stories, share ideas, talk about where they're at, what they're doing, because there's no better relief. I spent 12 years working with the Marine Corps. Never in my life have I seen purer communication than between Marines who have been in combat. I'm dead serious about this.
That means something.
They communicate at a level that very few human beings ever do. And when you got truck drivers coast to coast, border to border, and they're in a discrete, their own little bubble of communication, they can share stories and they can get the psychological relief of knowing that they're not alone. And I got to tell you something, networking like that, I don't want to tell you all the reasons why I know this, but networking with people that have similar experiences, similar circumstances, to understand that it's not me. It's not, I'm not sick. I don't have a problem. It's the condition of the world we're in. And there's other people experiencing the same thing I am. And the ventilation possibilities of saying, hey, I'm really pissed off, and here's the reason why. So, if I owned a trucking company, which I hope I never do, because I'm tired of working, I would create some kind of very large communication network that would be totally private, secure, just for my drivers. I don't know how you do it, but there's so many communication systems today. There's so much possibility with 5G coming on. I bet you could create your own communications network, and it would not, management of the company would not be allowed to participate. Only the drivers, totally the drivers. And I think you might find there's some psychological relief in that. Because right now, TV radios and crap like that, but it's a bunch of guys they don't know. If you could,
I don't even have a CB anymore. I don't carry a CB in my truck anymore. We don't do it because of everybody has an opinion and you don't always want to hear them. So it just, you limit the people you like talking to that way. And I know Nick.
I have a big appreciation for what Jim's saying. If you can work and help, I had this with McDonald's store managers. You have no idea what it's like to work at a 24-hour McDonald's every night. And you're dealing with people that you really don't want to deal with. And boy, I'll tell you, that wears on you. It wears your ass out. And I can understand why truck drivers get to a point where it's like, Jesus, I don't know how I'm going to get out of bed in the morning. I don't know how I'm going to go another mile. Or they just go another mile because they want to get home and they shouldn't go that mile. They got to park. Anyway, I can't solve your problem because I don't know that much about it. But I'll tell you what, I really empathize with this problem. Isolation is not a good thing. It is not. A good thing.
Nick is commenting when you see the Trucker Talk sponsored by Market Express commenting. I believe that's Nick Campos because he's a part of the page. Nick's one of our top executives. You've seen him on the show pretty regular. He's out sick this week. He's even putting up there. He said, feel free to reach out to him. He'll talk to you anytime, day or night. And Nick will be, but if you text him at 3:00 in the morning to talk to him, I hope you have a really big issue going on, because I don't think he'll be super happy when he answers the phone, but he'll try to help you, I promise you. So, and then my dispatcher's laughing at me commenting about calling the dispatcher. So yeah, I have to keep that in check.
Well, why don't you publish his number? I'll call him.
If he tells me it's okay, I'll do that. So it's up to him. So,
well, we're running out of lettuce on the East Coast. I need lettuce bad.
Yeah. So, that's a funny story with that one, but we'll talk about that one. But we were talking off air, and I know Ed has been following the next topic that we wanted to talk about this week. If you happen to be following anything to do with transportation topics or anything whatsoever, the train thefts going on in LA right now. I read a story this morning, and I've been following it. One of my friends brought it to my attention. I missed it. It went right over my head. But I read the story this minute, and they said train thefts are up 130% in LA. And Ed has been following this quite a while, and I'll let him tell the backstory on this, because he told me some stuff I didn't know. So
here's the problem. First of all, train theft, cargo containers out of Los Angeles, Long Beach port into the intermodal by Union Pacific Railroad. Their thefts through the 1st of January are up 356% year over year, and last year was 150% increase. So you're talking about damn near a 10-fold increase in thefts. Here's the thing. Those trains are going down tracks that have not been maintained. They have to go at very low speeds. The bad guys run out. They pull an emergency brake on a car, on just one car. Doesn't make any difference where it's at. It sends a signal to the engine that there's a failure in the braking system. It shuts the train down and stops. They run out with bolt cutters, simple, cheap bolt cutters you can buy anywhere, cut the locks, throw the door open. Number one priority is UPS canvas bags. Money, drugs, pharmaceuticals, shipped coast to coast. Grab a bag and go. It's high value cargo. The next thing they go after is Amazon packages that have street value. They'll rip them open. They'll look. They'll find vaping stuff, jewelry, whatever the hell they find. They take the high value stuff because they're going to sell it on the street to get drug money. If you go to YouTube right now and you do Union Pacific train thefts, you'll probably find 20 different videos of containers on these trains that are busted open. The railroad track from Long Beach all the way into downtown LA are just covered with busted boxes everywhere. On any given train of 100 cars, there's probably 20 of them that have been broken into. They don't even stop. Keep this in mind. The LA County Police Department, the Long Beach Police Department, LA County Police Department have no jurisdiction over the rail lines, because under the Railroad Acts of the 1920s, they have their own police department. They don't have anywhere near the number of cops they need for their 38,000 miles of rail lines. So when those trains are chugging along at 5 miles an hour going through LA, it's a perfect target. The Union Pacific won't call LA cops because they know they won't get any response. So they just let them go. So in a 12-mile stretch, they had 2 cops. 2 cops.
Wow.
Had 30 containers broken into in 4 hours. Now, I'll tell you why this is important to me. I'm in the restaurant business. We get all kinds of packaging, styrofoam packaging, paper cups, and shit coming out of China. Excuse me for the vulgar language. It really kind of irks me. Along with a lot of other stuff. There's no perishables. There's no refrigerated. Nobody's breaking into a refrigerated rail car to get lettuce. Trust me. But if you look at the grocery store shelves, one of the leading canning manufacturers of vegetables in the world is in China. They're shipping containers full of cans over here. They're in the supermarkets all over the place. This is a crisis, and nobody talks about it. If I was the federal government, I'd be all over Union Pacific like stink on a manure pile saying, what are you guys thinking? I'd mobilize the National Guard. And not only that, we keep talking about global warming and pollution and plastic. You want to look at these rail yards. They can barely get these trains down the tracks because there's so much garbage all over the place. Literally. And these containers are flopping open, stuff's falling out of them the whole time they're moving. And now, you say to yourself, well, somebody's paying for that. Who's paying for that? Oh, the insurance companies. Not actually. We are, because we don't get the goods. The insurance cost is built into the product cost. We're paying probably 20% more for products coming out of those two ports than we need to because of insurance coverage. The whole system is falling apart. And it isn't just the rail lines. I can tell you, you guys know this in the trucking industry. One of the biggest nightmares I have in my life right now is import-export of goods for restaurants, uniforms, equipment, because it's all coming from China and India. Nothing's being made in the United States anymore. This government has failed this country dramatically because we've made it impossible for businesses to grow in this country. You can't build a manufacturing facility in this country without at least 10 years worth of fights with zoning and all the rest of the nonsense. OSHA, we got more regulations than any country in the world. You think they give a damn about global warming in India, China, Indonesia? You know what they do with their garbage? They throw it in the rivers, they throw it in the ocean. They don't give a damn. We're talking about global warming. We shut down the oil supply, jacked up prices. China doesn't give a shit. They're building one coal-fired electric generating facility a month. One a month. They're buying all the coal they can get out of Montana right now in Wyoming. They buy it all because nobody in the United States is buying it. China this is crazy. The single country that has the biggest number of nuclear power plants is France because they have no natural resources of fossil fuel. So they build a whole bunch of nuclear power plants. So Macron is decided he's going to shut down the nuclear power plants. Global warming. How in the hell are they going to get electricity in France if they don't burn coal or natural gas? Oh, where are we getting the natural gas from? Oh, Russia. The dirtiest, filthiest natural gas on the planet, full of sulfur, horrible BTU content. Why? Why? In the name of global warming, which is nobody can prove it. Nobody can prove it. It's current science thinking. Think about this. How much money do you think the United States federal government gives to scientists to study global warming a year? Why would they write anything other than the government narrative in their research? Otherwise, they get the grants.
So
universities need grant money to survive. Okay, enough. This problem is a failure of leadership on so many levels. And by the way, where the hell's the FBI? Because that's a federal issue, not a state issue. Oh, by the way, where's the district attorney of California prosecuting these cats? If it was me, I'd have the entire police force or the Marine Corps up on the top of those hills. When those people come up those train tracks, they hit the top of that bridge, I'd arrest their ass on the spot. And I'd throw their ass in jail till they rotted. Because unless you punish criminals, they're going to keep doing what they do.
Well, and I'm going to bring Jim in on this too, because I brought this subject up because we have a yard. I'm not going to disclose anything with it, but it is, how do I want to say, it overlooks the railroad tracks, I guess is the best way to say it. And there is a homeless encampment literally on the hill behind it. So we go in and park our loaded trailers, and I'll let Jim tell if he share as much as he wants to. But we got to the point where we had to start backing our trailers up against the fence so they couldn't open the doors up, or they're going to fall off a 30-foot cliff down onto the railroad tracks, because we haul some very popular products down there. So So, Jim, what do you want to add to that? I'm trying to say it very tactfully without giving away.
You're chuckling about this. That's pathetic. It's
Yeah.
pathetic. We have a failure of government that doesn't recognize. It's like all the murders in the subway system in New York City. One simple reason. We're not dealing with the psychological problems of people or the homeless, so they live in the subway. They live there. So some nice young lady shows up and she's going to work at midnight and she gets her ass thrown in front of a train and gets killed only because we're not solving this problem. So we create another problem.
Yep.
Okay, Jim, you get to talk.
Yeah, that's. I mean, there is the overall lack of enforcement. I think you can roll the hand of time back here a little bit, and the whole defund the police environment from a year or so back, and it started to ratchet up things. But California has been very lax, one on enforcement, and it's not the fault of those out there in the blue. It's more a fault of the court system, legislature, et cetera, that they just don't have a very much of a bite, if you will, in terms of what the code is, and even what some of the offenses are how many, or what the level of offense is before there is a serious consequence. So, it kind of goes from, Ed, you remember this, the old turnstile jumpers, and when that was started to be enforced in New York City 3 or 4 decades ago, that started to change things for the better, start enforcing all things rather than just major crimes. And yeah, it turns the tide. The LA specific issue, and Roy, to our credit, we don't really have anything of consequential value. Beef jerky, toilet paper, and beer. Missing a 6-pack here every once in a while is a lot different than half a load of TV sets, or at times in my past, a whole load of TV sets 20, 30 years ago when they were real money. I suppose they are now if you get a whole trailer load of them. But we had that happen, and this was early in my trucking career. We had in LA a gunpoint holdup, and the tractor trailer confiscated, and the drivers pulled out at gunpoint, still at the shipper. And the truck was drove away before any police response, was able to get in proximity. The truck was long gone. We find it a couple days later, of course, completely empty. But that stuff's been going on in California and Southern California for a long time. I think it's reaching a point of crescendo when just anything moving about is a target and is looted, pilfered, etc., with no consequence, no visual enforcement, and really, like Ed was saying, just a totally muted reaction from anybody in a official position. Now, I did see just yesterday that the Union Pacific is posturing a complete pullout from Southern California, which may not sound like a big deal kind of on the surface, but that is a huge deal to the entire West Coast supply chain system, and really the Pacific, Mountain, and Central time zones. That is a monumental situation based on the ocean cargo coming in from China and the other places in the Far East. If that's no longer able to be handled by the rail, that creates a problem that I don't know what the solution is at that point, to take what's really handling the lion's share of the tonnage out of Southern California. If you remove that, or if UP was to do that, again, I think that sets off some things in the supply chain we really can't fathom at this point.
Yeah.
I would also say, and I'm not with the railroad, so I don't want to pretend I'm speaking on their behalf. I think there may be a difference between implementation and communication of this, but clearly they're raising their hand now, saying this is out of control, and we need some help at a little bit different level here. So I see this as kind of
what amazes me is, why isn't the national media? They talk about the supply chain and the breakdown, and they're pointing fingers. Nobody's talking about this retail theft that exists in the entire distribution network. It's everywhere. I can tell you, in restaurants, we have to inventory every damn truck that comes in down to the last nickel, because one case of meat here, one case of meat there. When you're paying $138 for a 40-pound box of chicken, if it disappears, retail wise, That's $500 worth of sales,
Mm-hmm.
in a restaurant. And it's just gone.
Yeah, and it's interesting.
They're paying for it.
It's interesting that the whole thing has moved from known to basically tolerated to now it's almost accepted. It just feels like that whole component of the enforcement of that has deteriorated to a level where there is no notice, there is no action, there's no response.
I want to be careful about my comments because I study this and know way more than I ought to know. George Soros spent $500 million in the last 3 years sponsoring liberal DAs across the United States. The lady in Chicago, Kim Foxx, and people like her, and the guy in California, literally hundreds of millions of dollars to get them elected to do away with bail reform, because they say bail doesn't really help. High bails don't help, but it keeps the bad guys off the street because they can't raise the money. When you let them out, this guy that just killed this girl in a furniture store, in and out of prison 5 times. He walked in there and stabbed her for what reason? He just went in and killed her. No reason. It's like the guy that shoved the 40-year-old Asian woman in front of a train in New York City. He's just a homeless guy. He said, "I'm God." That's a mental health issue. That is a societal problem the government ought to be dealing with. You can't deal with that with the police department. You need health professionals dealing with that stuff. So I don't understand for the life of me why our political leadership allows this crap to go on. What is it about are they impotent? I mean, I don't get it. It's like Biden says today that Putin may do a small incursion into Ukraine. He just turned on the green light. You out of your mind? Putin is an idiot. He's a power hungry guy. Okay, way off point. Sorry.
All right. So I got to throw in a quick shout out to my sponsor for this show that provides the internet service that makes all this happen, and Rick Workman. So we got to make sure we give him a shout out.
Tired of calling multiple companies to complete your low voltage projects? Minimize the hassle by calling Workman Communications, your locally owned one-stop shop for all low voltage needs. We tackle everything from commercial and residential data, telephone cabling to access control installation, CCTV, alarms, and audio-video solutions. With no job too big or too small, we'll ensure your project will be completed to your standards with precision quality results. Let's start a new project together.
Rick has been instrumental in making sure I have internet that we can just pull over on the side of the road and do these podcasts from, through all the media. And he does a lot of stuff with wiring up office buildings. He can do all your boardrooms, things like that. All of your electronic needs. He can put all your stuff together so you can communicate very well. Super good guy. So I always to make sure you give your sponsors credit no matter what you do. So I know we were going to get into another subject, but we try to keep these to about 30-minute length because he's getting out right at 5 o'clock his day-in time. So we're already holding him up at work. So I want to thank Ed for coming on tonight and sharing his stuff, and sharing his knowledge, and Jim for joining in as always. I am going to add one parting thought, and I'll probably piss Ed off with this one. So we'll leave it at that. So we see so many Hollywood liberals, and you're talking about the mental health issues. We see so many Hollywood elite liberal people talking about all these problems and blah, 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 and doing all this stuff. And I'm going to take LA County, since that's where we talked about the trains, the homelessness, and all this in that one particular sector. So let's take every one of these Hollywood elite liberals that have millions and millions of dollars. Well, name off a few: Ellen DeGeneres, Oprah Winfrey. The list goes on and on. I don't know Oprah's net worth, but she's got $400 or $500 million at least. Many of them do. So each one of them, if they took 50 million out of their 400 or 500 million, put it into a mental health and homeless institution in LA, privately ran, not government controlled, privately run, you could fix this. Stop telling us how to live. Put your money where your mouth is and put it out there. plain and simple.
How about Jeff Bezos' $750 million super yacht, hydrogen powered? Come
Okay,
on.
you're getting my point. I understand money's power, but that 50 million, is it really going to be the difference between you driving a Ford Pinto and a fucking Lamborghini? Pardon my language. No.
Roy, here's the deal, Roy. They didn't get rich by giving money to other people. And they're not going to start now. They are so eager.
They don't have to give it away. If they took that money and put it into an annuity, they don't even have to give it away. Put it into an annuity. Let the annuity.
That ain't going to happen.
Hey, I'm an idiot in a truck. I got a logical fix. We could fix all of these problems right there that we talked about.
You know what the United States debt is right now? Do you have any idea how much money this government? We just passed a $6 trillion Build America bill. You couldn't take 100 billion of that 6 trillion to build mental health. Think about this. During the LBJ administration in the Vietnam War in later years, they shut down all state and federal mental health facilities and said the communities are going to have to take care of this. It's not the federal government responsibility. And that's when we put homeless on the street. They were no longer institutionalized. They no longer had doctors. They were on the street. This is a failure of leadership, of government, and nothing else. With the tax dollars we're paying, with the tax dollars, you think about Elon Musk. This year, he's going to pay $9 billion in income tax. I don't feel sorry for him. Let's just take $1 billion of that and build a couple of mental health facilities in all the major cities in the United States and fund it with his $9 billion. I mean, what the hell are we talking about here? This is not a problem that can't get fixed.
Well, and I'm just going to say, you're talking about this Build Back Better America stuff that we've been hearing about. Why is the one person holding it up a member of the same party of the president? Why can't he control even his own party? And we'll leave it at that.
I know Joe Manchin. I can tell you why, because he's a principled man.
So
stuff in that bill he doesn't mind spending the money on good projects. He does not like what's happening in that bill relative to voter rights.
Yep.
That's what got him scared. Okay. Enough.
Well, we'll end it here so we can let Jim get home. He's still got to drive through Portland traffic to get home, so I don't envy him at all.
Don't worry about that. Don't worry about
Jim,
that.
good to meet you.
Right.
I think
Likewise, Ed.
Smart man. I hope we get to spend more time together.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. Same.
Thank you, guys, and thanks for everybody tuning in.
All right. Appreciate it, Roy. Nice